Hello, this is Jerry with McKellar's Modified Rides. Thought we'd run through some rear brake assemblies, disassembly and assembly. These are 10 by 2.5, but this would apply to any other rear drum brakes that you'd work with on your Mopars. A couple things I'd like to point out is there's actually two types of emergency brake. This bar right here. This particular type has the pin type right here. As you can see, it has a clip that clips that in. We'll talk more about that. And the later model, these type here was in the 70s or 60s and 70s. And as the 80s progressed, they had a device that would clip in here a little differently. It would just like hinge in there. I like to refer to those as this type is the pin type and the other type is the slot type. Either way, you can run the same brake shoes. They've made provisions with this hole here to, you can still use the pin type. So we carry one brake shoe, kind of covers both applications, but some do have a different emergency brake bar here. Another thing that changed over the years, the early ones had this short spring right here on the one side and a long spring over here. As it progressed into the 80s, they had two identical springs here, these two long springs. They're usually yellow when you buy the new ones. You'd have a yellow spring one here, and then the other one, it would just clip into this hole right here instead of clipping it up here. As you can see on the later model brake shoes, they do have the hole, the provision to run that longer spring. If you wanted to run the shorter spring and you bought that kit, it would clip into this slot here just as well if you wanted to go that way. But to keep things simple, we just carry the one rear brake shoe, and I just like to run the 4 long springs, but you're welcome to do anything. So let's run through here. We're going to disassemble this. Basically, the two tools you need are these two tools here, this one to release these springs and this one to release these springs. So what I like to do is just pop these off. Set that one aside. That one aside, it's pretty easy pop off. As far as this emergency brake self-adjuster, if you just push up on this device here, I found it's just really simple. You can pull that right off as easy as that. These other springs that you release, I lift them up, put my finger on the back so it doesn't push through, and then just give it a quarter of a turn there, and that releases that. Same thing on this side here, down, quarter of a turn, and that releases it. Once you do that, basically that releases the whole brake assembly, and you can remove it all as an assembly if you wish. Lay it aside as such. And that gets you down to the wheel cylinder. And then, of course, these are these pins we talked about. They just slide through. And then to release the wheel cylinder, you just got 2 1/4-inch bolts on the back. Zap those out, and your wheel cylinder's off. Simple. That's as simple as disassembly. We'll clean all these components up, and we'll go over reassembly. Okay, now we're gonna go through reassembly. Here's our brake shoes we're gonna be installing. This is the primary shoe. It always goes towards the front. You can tell that because of more metal surface area here. The secondary shoe has more brake material towards the top. That's the secondary shoe, goes towards the rear. You always can tell the primary shoe is opposite of the self-adjuster linkage pin right here that goes in there. And so I like to start out with this spring here. This weird bend here goes towards this self-adjuster linkage. Stick in that hole there, right over in that one there. And then this is the kit that you get for the self-adjuster itself. Get all these components here, and in some cases you don't have this pin installed in your brake shoes. Ours come with that in there, but if they didn't, they give you that pin. You can just put a center punch in the middle of that hole and swedge it out, and that'll hold this pin in. It's a little nicer when it's already pre-installed. These components here are pretty much the same from right to left. The difference would be these two pieces here. This spring has a little different bend to it from one side to the other, and then the star wheel, these teeth right here are going a different direction from one side to the other. So I like to take the star wheel, I put a little assembly grease on this piece here. Some cases you have a little washer that goes on there. If you have that, you can reuse that or run it. It doesn't always come in the kit. So now we have our spring installed in there. I like to squeeze this in next. That. And then, let's see, now we're going to be putting this parking brake lever in. We talked a little about this different types here. You have the slot type and the pin type. This pin type just passes through that hole right there. It kind of made a little hole, so you have provisions to put that in. Then you'll need the clip that comes in the hardware kit. Slide that through there. Make sure it's fully seated like that, and then just give her a squeeze. Don't have to, just make sure it hangs on there. That should be sufficient. Okay, so now that we got that installed, we're gonna put the crossbar in place. Slides into that parking brake lever and over into this brake shoe. Have this little spring on the top. Probably could go either way, but now you got them partially assembled. Makes it a little easier for install. So we'll set that aside a moment. We'll get our brake backing plates here. It's all been sandblasted and painted. We've got assembly grease that comes into your kit. You get a little packet like this, so you can use some just universal brake assembly grease, but I like to put it on all these wearing pads here. So now we do that, we're gonna, let's put our wheel cylinder in first. We got the wheel cylinder here, we put our clips in there. Originally you had a gasket that went on the back of that. I like the style here with this elongated egg-shaped hole. Kind of goes around the casting there. Expose the bolts and then just plug that in the hole. Like so. And then in the kit you usually get some lock washers and some little 1/4 20 bolts here, 7/16 heads. I prefer something that looks more like the OEM, so I get these bolts here, same 1/4 20, but they have a 3/8 hex head on them. They got a built-on washer with little serrated edges on it. Getting the start here, there we go. So just like that, tuck everything in and around there. Snug those up a little bit. Okay, got that installed, flip it back over. Now we can set this somewhat assembled brake assembly on there. We just put that in there, put that in there. Make sure everything doesn't get away from us here. And so that's it, it goes on there. Now the brake spring kits that you get, there's two different types. We've talked a little bit about this, but the 80s vehicles had the 4 yellow springs in it. I prefer that kit. It's a pretty good kit. The only difference is this particular kit only gives you 4 of these cupped washers when you kind of need 8 of them. So I kind of just reuse some of the old ones. I'll show you that in a minute. But the kits from the 60s and 70s, that kit, for whatever reason, you get 8 of those cup washers on there, but you only get 2 of the yellow springs and 2 of these shorter black springs. So either one will work on it. Again, it's just a preference thing, so I run this kit, and that's what we're gonna be showing you today. Now that we got it all on there, we're gonna put the securing pins in the back. Let's pass it through the hole here. Slide it up and over through there. We talked about reusing these. I've blasted and painted those cups. Put that on top of there. Put it on a 1/4 turn. Secures that. We'll do the same for the other side. There are 2 lengths, different lengths of these pins. This particular one uses the shorter length, but there are longer lengths in there, so match those up with your originals. All right, so got that on. Make sure all your bars and everything are still in place. And then you can proceed with the larger springs put on. So first thing we do is put this plate here on the top. That goes upward like that. Help keep those in line. Take your self-adjuster cable bracket here and stick that in the hole. Then set the cable itself on there. Sometimes it's gonna struggle, don't worry too much right now, mainly just get it up in there. Then stick this one cable in that hole so it keeps things in place. Again, we're gonna use that same tool we did to disassembly. We're gonna assemble it. This helps pry the spring over and on top of there. Like that. Sometimes things move around a little bit. There we go. Don't get frustrated with it. Just take your time, let it kind of go where it wants to. Then always move it around as you go. So now we'll install the second spring. In there for some reason. There we go. Okay, now this here just lays in that area, in that little trough right there on the side. Then we put this spring here on. Goes with this flat surface towards the brake shoe. Set it like that. And take this clip here, it has the large and small, right? You want to stick it through the hole, the big end. Take your needle nose, slide it up on top of there. Like that. And then, like we disassembled it, if you just push that up, it'll slop in that hole. And that is the way it self-adjusts. Every time you back up and apply the brakes, it'll usually give you a click or two, and it'll keep your rear brakes adjusted, or so it's supposed to. And let's see, it kind of covers all that. One other thing we do, we can put these plugs in the back. You got your self-adjuster hole plugs. Put those in. That's pretty much it. Now when you go to adjustment, you'll slide your drum on there. It's gonna be quite loose because this is all the way adjusted in at this point. So I like to just turn this and get it roughly close with the drum so it slides on, but yet you can still move it and you're not fighting it. And then if you just go ahead and bolt everything all up, the wheel, and tighten it all up, you can spin the wheel if it spins freely. And if you were to spin it one full turn, and you just keep adjusting it through the adjuster holes until it spins one full turn before it starts to drag, that's pretty close to what you want to be. You want to get these shoes out and mating with the drum surface. Hopefully that helps. If you need any of these parts or assistance getting this done, feel free to contact me. My name's Jerry. I'm with McKellar's Modified Rides. I appreciate your time.